All right, everybody, this is Scott Luberto, and we're just going to go ahead and talk a little bit about his experience as he left the classroom and what he's doing now. He has a lot of great insight. And so, Scott, if you want to go ahead and just tell everybody a little bit about yourself, tell them what you did prior, how you got into teaching, and what you're doing now. Just feel free. I'll ask questions, and we'll kind of just make it an informal conversation and whatever we can do to help current teachers who are looking to leave the classroom. So.
Yeah, awesome. Gosh, there's several questions there, so I think I'll start with kind of how I got into teaching.
Yes.
Perfect. So I'm a upstate New Yorker by birth. Got really tired of the cold. Decided to figure out how far south I could get myself for college. Ended up in Davidson, North Carolina, right north of Charlotte. And so I was going to school actually on like a heavy pre-law track. So I thought I wanted to be an attorney. And so over the summers, I was doing some internships. And one of them happened to be in DC, working for a policy think tank. But I really had this passion around education. So I was on this education policy task force. Yeah. And every day I'd put on my little suit and I'd go to kind of Northwest DC and I would do research on education reform. Meanwhile, though, I was living kind of in an up and coming neighborhood in Northeast DC. Which was very different, right, from where I was going to work every day.
Okay.
And so as part of that experience, I got to know my neighborhood and the kids that were living there. And at one point there was this block party and I'm out there. I used to be a wrestler and a rugby player and I'm teaching some of the kids how to play rugby. And I'll never forget this little boy named Ty. He was the most natural athlete I've ever met in my life. And I said, Ty, when you get to high school, because he was only 8th grade. I said, when you get to high school, you've got to play rugby. You'd be an amazing player. And he looks at me dead in the eyes and says, well, I'm not going to high school.
Oh.
I was like, of course you're going to high school. You have to go to high school. And he's like no, my brother didn't go to high school and he's doing well for himself. And so here I am arguing with this 13-year-old that he must go to high school. And I'm getting really upset with him. And I'm like, you're going to high school. It's happening. And so I never forget, I go in the house and one of the roommates I was living with, I said, can you believe this kid? He's tell me he's not going to high school. And he's like, absolutely I can. What do you mean? I know plenty of people who don't go to college, but I never met a kid who said, I'm not going to high school.
Yeah, me either. That's it. I wasn't expecting you to say that, so. Yeah.
And so he happened to do the Teach for America program down, I believe in the Mississippi Delta region.
Okay.
And he said, he taught middle school and he's like, I had a lot of students that were on a trajectory not to go to high school.
Okay.
And so it was the first time I had heard of Teach for America, did a bunch of research, realized the types of communities they were working in and the work they were doing. And then it kind of made me feel like this total fraud that here I was going and working on education reform policy and I had no idea what I was talking about.
That is pretty crazy. That's really interesting. That's
yeah. So I was like, gosh, if I want any shot ever fixing these and working on the policy, I should at least know what I'm talking about. What better way than to go teach and serve in those communities? Right. So about 2 weeks later, I applied for the Teach for America program, and that's how I got into the kind of teaching path.
Wow, that's crazy. So you went from looking at ed policy and then having this story this thing happen to you and then into teaching. So Teach for America, I actually, when I was a teacher, I taught in South Texas and I knew I had a lot of friends, tons of friends actually in the area who were in the Teach for America program. So I know a little bit. Could you kind of go through a quick overview of what Teach for America is and what your experience was within Teach for America? And also want to know what subject you taught and what grade level and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Teach for America model is interesting in that it takes college students who didn't necessarily have to go to school to be a teacher. And it essentially says if you were a high-performing college, kind of well-rounded individual with a passion for helping and developing others, that they can teach you how to teach. And the model says we're going to go teach in kind of high-need communities where often they have trouble staffing. So you go through the process and essentially you don't get to say where you're going to teach. You get to give your preference, but it's not set. So they say like, here's what your coursework was in college. We think this aligns, or you could be, you know, a math teacher, a science teacher, et cetera. They put you through a really intense summer, I'll call it boot camp, like how to be a teacher, where you're going to classes, teaching summer school, and then getting coached all throughout that summer. And then come September, they give you a shiny classroom and they say, this one's yours. And then something I think that's special about the model is a tremendous amount of ongoing professional development and a teacher coach who comes and works with you very regularly and coaches you on kind of areas that you can improve and what you're doing well.
Gotcha. Very cool. So what subject was it that you ended up being placed in?
Yeah, so I was a 9th grade world history teacher in Charlotte.
Okay. So you were, and what town was it you were in prior to this again? I know New York, right? So did you go from New York to Charlotte?
Actually, so I was going to school in Davidson, which was right north of Charlotte.
Okay.
And the interesting thing about Teach for America is they're like, well, we could place you in any one of, I don't know, 100 cities. And I said, really, I don't care where you send me. Really, I had some passion to go back to DC. I was like, this is kind of where this whole journey started. So I probably preferenced DC. And I really want to do high school students. And just randomly, they're like, and Charlotte. And so I was like, oh, cool, I'm already here.
Like world history. There you go.
Yeah, so they usually do, they place you in like a high school and then they'll say social studies. And then the school kind of assigns you as they need you.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So then how long did you stay and Teach for America?
So 2 years.
Okay. So you were there for 2 years and then, cause is it a 2-year commitment? Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did I hear something about you winning some kind of Teach for America award or something at some point?
Yeah, so I was nominated for, I guess called like the Suleiman National Award, which is like Teach for America's like national award. So I think I was like a finalist for my region for that. And then for the school I was teaching at, I actually won the first year Rookie of the Year and then the second year Teacher of the Year.
Wow. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Very lucky. I had some good kids.
That is so neat. That's a great story. So then you left there and then you went back to school policy?
So I was still interested in like the policy and again, this like reform piece. So over the summer of my first year going into second year, I did this program in Charlotte-Mecklenburg School District called Aspiring Leaders.
Okay.
So they choose 9 teachers from the whole district and they say, you get to go work with like the superintendent and the zone superintendents on things like policy, community outreach, things of that nature.
Okay.
That was really cool because it kind of opened up my scope beyond the classroom.
Right.
And I got to see, you know, everything from like bond proposals and capital projects to larger initiatives. CMS is like 140,000 students, so it's a pretty large district.
Oh my goodness.
So then I said, you know what, I love the classroom. I was having a blast. I was, you know, world history. I was dressing up as Napoleon and leading the troops. But I really thought, you know, maybe like school leadership was a path that I wanted to go down. I really wanted to kind of grow the scope of the impact I could have beyond just the 120 students I was currently impacting every day.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So then what happened from there?
Yeah. So one of the really cool things about Teach for America is I think, and just teaching in general, is you're just meeting incredible people. Mm-hmm. And I think a disservice some folks do themselves is, you know, once you become a teacher, like, well, I have this job and this is my thing. And, you know, it gets easy to forget about like the networking aspect of it.
Right.
And so I'm a pretty naturally outgoing and friendly guy. So I love meeting new people and hearing their stories. And one of the folks that was doing Teach for America with me, a gentleman named Richard Luck, his family owns a large mining and aggregates company in Virginia. And one day, after I'd done the Aspiring Leaders and I think won the award, he reached out and said like, hey man, like, do you have any interest at working at Luck Stone? And I was like, I didn't know much about it. And I was like, the mining company? No, I don't.
Yeah.
But he said, like, no, we do a tremendous more amount of work beyond that. And they actually had started a nonprofit leadership institute that did work with other companies to kind of bring what they call values-based leadership to others.
Okay.
And they had this really cool mission, even though it's a mining company, the purpose of the company is to ignite human potential around the world. Okay. And I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And they convinced me to come out of the classroom.
Awesome. So your tradition or transition, I guess I could say, it seems like, some teachers, they don't know that there's something else. They don't realize that there's other things that they can do, that their skills transfer to. And it might take somebody's story or them just being desperate, looking on the internet like myself, trying to figure out what I can do to actually get out. So it sounds like you had a little different transition where somebody actually approached you and asked you to come work for them. But I'm sure you still probably, did you still have some of those, again, I don't know if, I would say that I had doubts myself as a teacher, like, well, I'm just a teacher. I can't do that, like what I don't know, am I able to, am I qualified? And did you have any of those self-doubts and feelings?
Oh my gosh, I think they're so real, right? It's almost this like imposter syndrome. Yeah. I was like, well, what do I know? I'm just teaching, I'm hanging out with 14-year-olds all day. Like, how in the world am I going to go sit in rooms with CEOs and VPs and teach them about leadership?
Yeah.
And I was like, is it going to be 10 years before they actually let me teach anybody? But I've read some of your work, and I think it's so true that being a teacher, right, you are a leader. And so many of the skills that companies, right, like some of the work that Interwill, our nonprofit leadership consulting group does, right, one of the things they spend, and companies spend a tremendous amount of money on their private side employees, is teaching them things like good communication, clear preparation, emotional intelligence, building strong relationships, having a clear vision. Right. And I think those are things that any good teacher has down. And it's such an advantage when you get kind of onto the private side where folks go, like, gosh, I thought you were just a teacher. Like, who knew that you could project manage or lead a team effectively?
Oh, that's so true, because I've ran into people over the years where they don't want to hire somebody to be an instructional designer because they were just a teacher.
That irks me so bad.
Oh, it does. And so I feel bad for them almost in a way, because I'm like, you have no idea. Like once people actually know what teachers do and what they go through and the skills that they have to have in order to be, like you see the posts, like, I'm a mother, I'm a nurse, I'm a this, I'm a that, and they're all kind of touchy-feely type of things, but they're also all these other skills that they learn and that they develop through being a classroom teacher, which can be transferred into, like you said, like the leadership and the project management. But they don't think of it that way. And I was the same way. And it took me actually getting involved in ATD and actually being in the private sector or, outside of teaching for a while, and actually being around other people to realize I can do a lot of this stuff and I know a lot of this stuff. It's just, they talk about it different, or
yeah, absolutely.
And so it's just crazy. And it's awesome to hear like all these stories, and we can keep talking about them. And then as teachers who currently possibly are in our shoes might realize, like, it might help improve their confidence that they actually have skills that they can improve upon and they can take out of the classroom and do something else if that's what they are looking to do. So
yeah, I would say I have this, I think once you've taught, everything else in life is easy. It's just such a, coming out of college and going right into a classroom at 21, 22 years old is 100% trial by fire, and it grows you up very quickly. And being responsible for the careers and futures of 120, 150, however many people, I think is incredible preparation for any other job you want.
Yeah, and you make a great point, because I've always said, like, once, I think you pretty much said the same exact thing, maybe a little different, maybe exactly the same, but like once you've been a teacher, I feel like you can pretty much do anything you want after that with, the right coaching and the right lingo transfer and stuff. So what I've been developing is basically helping teachers who want to leave the classroom to still use their teaching and education degree. So like instructional design and training and so forth. But I mean, I know tons of teachers who have even left that I'm going to look at doing interviews with as well that branch out from that. I mean, somebody I'm thinking of right now, she left teaching to start her own floral bouquet company.
Yeah.
And doing, you know, bridal event planning, wedding planning and stuff like that. So, you know, there's so many other options, but so I'm more familiar with the side of people going into education and training, but there's so many other opportunities as well. So I guess I'll just take that chance to ask you, do you happen to know of other, from the people you know that were teachers, out of the ones who have left, do you happen to know what most of them have gone into, or anything unique that teachers have left and gone in to do?
Yeah, so I think about, right, so when I left teaching, I didn't go right into like the training side, right? So I went, actually, this is a bizarre next step, but I went into working in the mines, like in the quarries.
Yes, I remember you saying that. You have to talk about that.
Yeah, so Luck has a pretty strong belief that in order to kind of lead and do development and do kind of any role in the company, that you have to understand what the core business is, which I think is a phenomenal tenet. And so my first 6 months at the company were spending about a month at 6 different quarries, doing everything from driving, 75-ton haul trucks to being like a plant operator, doing a little bit of welding. I mean, just a very different experience from like the classroom setting.
Now, I know when we talked, it was ATD that we met, and you were telling me about now I might have the terminology wrong here, but you're telling me about these quarries that you worked at. I don't know if I'm saying it right. Yep. I have an envision of it being like a large mound of dirt that kind of has like a rim, and then it kind of sinks in and there's things can you kind of explain, just because it's so interesting, I think, and knowing that you went from teaching to doing this and then doing what you're doing now, which I want to talk about a little bit too. So
yeah, so a quarry is essentially just a big hole in the ground where it's like we use explosive to kind of drill down into the earth, and it's kind of step layer down, and the equipment looks like big Tonka trucks and things of that nature. I think it's like every little boy and some little girl's dreams to do this. So it was an incredible experience. The guys and girls I got to work with are awesome. They can fix things that you can't imagine. They can build things that are incredible, and it was just such a learning experience. And I think the thing I took away from teaching is, yeah, you might not know how to do whatever the next thing you're trying to do, but if you kind of keep that like student mindset of, I'm just going to learn it. I learned how to teach. That was hard. I can learn how to be an instructional designer. I can learn how to be a business owner. I can learn how to be a team leader.
Right.
So it's just never kind of losing that curiosity that I think will make people successful.
Yeah. Awesome. Very true. So now I want to move also into what you think of networking, or what kind of networking you've done or been able to do. And I also want to talk about what your current role is. So yeah, whichever way you want to go from there, go ahead. I'd love for you to chat a little bit about each of those.
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of just getting to know people. One of my favorite things is connecting people. I think incredible things happen when you get really smart and talented people in a room. So whether that's your traditional networking events, just being friendly. You see somebody and they look interesting, going and saying hi. Some of the coolest and best relationships I've had from sitting down at a table and meeting you.
Yeah.
So I would say, joining the professional development things. If, over those summers, if you're a teacher, looking for other opportunities, whether it's with the district, through summer school programs, going to the conferences, joining things like ATD, I think are awesome opportunities to meet people.
Awesome. Sounds good. Couldn't agree more. I think the amount of skills, and again, it depends on what you're looking to get into and where you're going, but it seems like the amount of skills that you need to go into whatever you're doing is always going to be there. But being a teacher, having all of that experience, leaving the classroom, having that motivation and ambition to just know, like you said before, I'm going to learn this. I'm just a curious learner. I want to go. I want to learn there. Learn that. Sorry. You can pretty much go and do pretty much anything it is that you're wanting to do at that point in time. You might just need some more coaching. You have the basic foundation. And networking is key. If it wasn't for networking, I would not be anywhere close to where I was today. I wouldn't have the confidence that I have today. I would probably still think I couldn't do a lot of things that I can do now, that I knew I had the basic skills for, and then I further developed through talking to people and realizing that we had this thing in common, and then it set off light bulbs. I could go search for this, or I could ask them about this, or I could go learn about this.
Mm-hmm.
So networking is just hands down, I think, one of the most important things. Even, I mean, I don't want to say more important than building skills, but I think networking is one of the keys to help you build those skills as well. So,
and being able to speak about, I think, being able to speak about the skills that you have as a teacher.
Yes.
Because it's really easy for people to assume they know what you do as a teacher,
Yeah.
but telling them, you know, the level of intentionality and purpose and how you differentiate, how you build relationships with the community. I mean, those are all such transferable skills to any job.
And I have to say really quick, so as for the resume, you know, the terminology.
Yeah.
So one thing that I remember, and I'm curious what you think in your situation. So me, when I was a teacher, my resume would be like, taught 6th grade math, managed classroom, communicated with parents. Like that was like what my resume was. And then when you start to look at when you leave and when you actually see all the skill, at least for me, it took me forever to actually see all these skills that I actually had and that I got from the classroom.
Yeah.
But, and I think I still, even when people were telling me, you as a teacher, you did this, you can put this on your resume, I felt like I was being a fraud, because I'm like, no, I can't say those things. But the more I'm doing this, I'm like, I so could have, and I so should have, and now I can. And did you have any experiences like that?
Yes, I think it's, again, so easy to be like, well, I just teach every day. I don't know what, you know? And so I think when I was like looking at doing my resume, I didn't look at other teacher resumes. I looked at instructional designers, coaches, trainers, training managers. I said, like, well, what are the things that they're doing? And I said, gosh, I do all of that for 14-year-olds and just not for adults.
Yeah.
I'm building relationships, I'm managing projects, I'm using data to make decisions. You know, I have long-term plans, I have a strategy, to develop vision. All of these things that it takes to be a really good senior corporate trainer, etc., that you're doing as a teacher every day and just not thinking.
Yep. So moving to that, being a good corporate trainer, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, or your path and journey to where you are now from? I mean, I know we already talked about you getting into teaching and then leaving the classroom and then working in the quarries. And so after working in the quarries, I think you said it was 6 months. Can you kind of tell me a little bit about what, where that went? And maybe if you, as you're talking about it, if you think of teacher skills that, you know, came in, feel free to go there as well, or I might call some things out and ask you. So go ahead.
Yeah, so after those first 6 months, I took over some like more basic responsibilities. Like I built out a new hire orientation program. I was teaching that for all new hires. Then I got some certifications and things like insights, personality assessment. I started doing coaching and workshops around that tool. We also have some other classes on like how to give and receive feedback effectively. So I was teaching several courses for our folks. I think the tools, right? So being a classroom teacher made transitioning into teaching adults. People will talk a lot about the differences, and there are some. In my opinion, it's easier to teach adults.
Yes.
I mean, you know, trying to keep the attention of a 14-year-old on ancient Greek, you know, democracy can be a challenge. If you can do that well, then, you know, talking to adults about how to effectively lead a team while they're being paid to sit there, I think you can do it pretty well.
Yes.
The other things that, you know, in developing new programs, I think it comes as second nature to teachers around how to develop a new program. I got into the e-learning side, and so started developing content. As a classroom teacher, I was always really into the newest technology and apps and things like that. I think I was able to actually push our company ahead and say, you know, as a teacher, we were using this. Like, as a private company, we've got large training resources. We could be doing some really cool stuff.
That's awesome. That's great. And you bring up a good point with technology, because I know a lot of teachers I've talked to, they're always not so sure about the technology side of things. well, I don't have the technology skills and I can't do that. And I will say that when I run, while I was teaching, or even now to this day, if I run into teachers and they don't use PowerPoints, they're not comfortable with PowerPoints, they're not comfortable with the technology side of things, I would lean more towards helping encourage them to look into getting into more of like an analysis, analysis and design type of role. That's maybe not exactly for e-learning, but maybe for developing training, like you said. But anybody who is comfortable with creating PowerPoints and using, the clickers or using the smart boards or Promethean boards and all that stuff, if that's something they enjoy, or like you said, and like I was always that teacher that was going out and learning the newest and greatest technology and then teaching the other teachers how to use that, or how to use spreadsheets. Like, I'm a spreadsheet guru. So it's like, if you have those technology skills, you easily pick up and learn on the other skills and technology, I think. But if you're one of those teachers that don't, then, or if you're not a technology fan, then I think you kind of might struggle a little bit more, unless you can find a role that's specifically that analysis front end stage. So if you have anything to add on that, or.
Yeah, I would just say kind of find whatever, I think Marcus Buckingham calls them your strengths, your spikiness. So finding out wherever your fastballs are. For me, one of them was like using technology and like using data to make decisions. And so when you go to sell yourself to a company, those are two things that are very valuable to companies, and lots of people struggle with it, not just teachers, right? So if you can come in and say, here's my track record of using data to make decisions, mine was around students and outcomes, but it could be about anything. That's a tremendously valuable skill to, right? If you're the newest and greatest app person, bring that with you. If you're the person who's really good at creating processes and structures and things of that nature, really sell that, because all of those things are very different, but they're all, I think, incredibly valuable in their own right.
Yeah, I think those points you made right there are totally wonderful. The data and numbers. I mean, teachers a lot of times will, I don't know how common it is in other school districts, but where I was, we always were given reports, or we would then a lot of times create our own reports and use our own songs, especially if we were spreadsheet gurus like I was. We'd be creating our own spreadsheets to find out our own numbers of our own student success and figure out ways to do things. And I hadn't really thought too much about that, but that is a great example as to a great strategy that can be used in instructional design or other business, any other kind of business role for the most part. That's huge, because data is everything nowadays. So
yeah, and I think I just assumed that when I got into the private sector that they were going to be incredibly data driven. And I was really shocked to say, gosh, like, how are you measuring the impact of, you're spending a tremendous amount of money on this training. Like, how are you measuring the impact? Right. So then you learn about things.
Wait, you're a teacher. What? Wait.
Yeah. Like, I'm like, well, gosh, my budget used to be $80 a year or whatever for printer paper. Like, if you're going to give me all this money, I feel like I need to justify how I'm using it and the impact it's making. And, a lot of folks, I think, are, on the Kirkpatrick model, are still in that like level 1 kind of feedback smile sheet piece.
Right.
So if you can even do very basic things like a pre and post assessment to show kind of knowledge gain, or, then you can start to do some cooler stuff around behavioral observations before and after, or if you can really kind of validate it against like business outcomes. If you were a teacher, I think the best thing you can do for yourself is start to learn whatever industry you want to go work in, like what are the metrics and things that are important to them, and then figure out what skills would be required to achieve those metrics, and then start to speak in a language of alignment. So here's what your goals as a business person are. I understand that in order to achieve those, you're going to need people that have these skills. Yeah. As a teacher, I know how to do a skills analysis to figure out what we're doing really well and where our gaps are. And then I can back that up into the training that will help you achieve those business outcomes.
Wow.
Nothing will make a VP, a CEO smile greater than when I'm not just doing training to do training. I'm doing training to help you achieve your goals. And I think that's incredibly powerful.
And what you just said, I think, is incredibly powerful for anybody that's going to be watching this. So that's a wonderful point right there.
Yeah, that's how they go from viewing you as like a teacher, trainer, something they have to do, to like a true, I would say, like business partner that's trying to help them achieve their goals.
And you just kind of summed up, there's a class that I had recently, and one of the hugest components of the class was how anybody in the training department or the chief learning officer or whatever in a corporation, one of your primary goals is to be seen by the executive office as a partner. So it's going to help them and not just a trainer, designer, instruction designer, HR person, whatever it might be. So I think you could have taught that class.
Appreciate it.
So then now, last thing, let's see, we're at 10:05. How are you on time?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. So the one other thing I was going to want to ask you about, what is it that you do right now in your role on a daily basis, in and out? Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm kind of in an interesting spot because currently I'm like the training manager for the company. So we're like an 800-ish folks, probably 850 person company. And I focus on the technical training. When I was brought into the company, I did a lot of the leadership. I call them soft skills. I'll call them the hard skills. Now,
Seth Godin, somebody at ATD, don't call them soft skills, to call them real skills. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's hilarious. I know that's why
couldn't agree more.
Now we try not to say soft skills. Like, what should we say instead?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh my gosh. So now I oversee the training of all of the kind of very technical skills on everything from like how to use explosives, how to fix those haul trucks, how to mine properly. I mean, how to fix conveyors and crushers and things of that nature. And honestly, I love that because being like data driven, those are all like very clearly observable, trackable things. Mm-hmm. So I think it's almost like easier to develop programs around that than it is on the soft skills. So that's been my job for the last few years. I actually just hired my replacement because I'm actually going to go, again, kind of being a continuous learner, I'm going to go back into operations for another year to kind of learn more about the day-to-day of the business.
Okay.
So I'll be stepping out and I'll literally be helping to like run one of those plants.
Wow. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then as somebody who just likes to stay busy, one of the things I think teachers do a good job of that I've seen is like identifying problems, whether it's for their students, for their classrooms, for their teams, and then just coming up with solutions.
Okay.
And so me and some other folks identified kind of a gap around like the training and development space on one of the things I think all classroom teachers struggle with is like differentiation for their students. Okay. I've got 30, 35 kids. How do I help this student who's really struggling while at the same time challenging this high performer while helping kind of everybody in the middle?
Yeah.
That for me hasn't changed for adults, right? You're still going to have that same case. One thing I've seen is companies will often roll out a kind of one size fits all. Right. So whether that's everybody goes to the same communication 101 training or welding 101 in my case, the thing that really frustrates me is when we don't treat people, this is a big difference for adults, I think. You need to acknowledge that they have previous experience and knowledge. And if you don't do that, you'll quickly alienate them and they won't value the training.
Okay.
The best way I found to do that is to acknowledge that by trying to figure out if it's welding, how good are you at welding to date? And then saying, if you're on a 5-point scale, a level 4 welder, you need a much different learning experience than the person who's a level 1 welder.
Okay.
So one thing I would challenge all teachers who are coming, if you're going to the corporate training side, is don't forget that differentiation piece. It's super important, and I think will win you lots of merit on the corporate side. And so, we've developed some software to help kind of do that at scale, because you might be able to do it well for 30 people, maybe 100. Once you start talking 5, 6, 7, 800 into the thousands, I think that becomes really challenging.
Now, when you say we develop software for that, what kind of software and what is this that you're referring to?
Yes. So it's a 360. So essentially at Luck, we were using a technical 360 that I developed based on some technical competencies it took to do jobs. Mm-hmm. And we use kind of behavioral indicators of what that looks like at every level. And then I was going out to the sites and saying, like, how good are you at welding, at plant operation, et cetera. I was then spending a tremendous amount of time trying to figure out, all right, if you're a level 3, I'm going to go send a coach to work with you on that welding. So I was making individual development plans for all these people.
Wow.
That quickly becomes kind of an unmanageable bear because you're making IDPs for 500 people and trying to keep up with them.
Yeah.
So I spent a great deal of time trying to find a solution where I could upload these kind of 360s. And then as a training and development person, my favorite thing is developing and curating content.
Okay.
And I was like, gosh, I wish I could just plug in, if you're a level 3, this, suggest to them this. Or if you're level 5, suggest to them this. And I found lots of 360 tools and I found lots of LMSs, but nothing that I would say was like an actionable 360 that did that for you, said, here's what you can do about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the little entrepreneurial light bulb went off in my head and I said, gosh, I wonder how hard that would be to build. Turns out pretty hard. But so I reached out to some people I trust and had some cool conversations. And then we launched our own kind of startup small business to do just that.
And the name of the company?
Is Atlas Navigator.
Okay, we got to throw that in there so everybody knows. So
appreciate it.
So Atlas Navigator, and has it been 1 or 2 years now that's been out?
So we had the idea 11 months ago, and I think we launched 6 weeks ago. So
launched 6 weeks ago. Okay, because I know when we talked, I know we were talking about it and it had been around. I was thinking that it was launched already at that point. So it just launched.
Yeah, we're new, and we just got our second client already. So it's been a cool experience.
Amazing.
And again, just keeping learning.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Congratulations.
So if you would ask me when I was teaching 9th grade world history, hanging out with 14-year-olds all day, if I could be, heading up a small business, learning about development and marketing and sales. And I just think it goes a long way to show, like, if you're curious and just keep that learner mindset, you can do whatever you want after you've been a teacher.
Being curious and learner mindset, that might have to be what the title of this becomes.
I'm good with that.
All right. And one other thing I did want to ask about, I can see you were mentioning that you're developing a lot of training for, like mining and the technical side of things. I can see some teachers being like, well, I don't have those skills. I don't know what that is. Can you explain, like, I don't know in your situation, if because you did do those, if you did know them so you could develop them on your own, or have you been working with subject matter experts to develop those? Can you kind of talk about that a little bit so that they know and understand that it's not like you have to know everything as an instructional designer, but a lot of times you work with subject matter experts, which is a difference from teaching.
I would say it's actually an advantage. So I could not on my own teach any of these things. I know just enough about them to understand some of the lingo. I think the advantage that somebody who doesn't know it well brings to the table is you can work with your subject matter experts who know it really well and often know it too well to, I think, teach it effectively.
Yes.
Because they take for granted that learners going to know a bunch of these other things, where you can say, as a fresh learner, teach it to me.
Right.
I, as the learner now, teachers, I think, have a gift around breaking content into consumable bites.
Mm-hmm.
And what your job then becomes, you're really smart, you teach it to me, I'm going to tell you what I think was really easy to understand, kind of what were some of the challenges, what we didn't go into depth, what we spend too much time on. And then you just get to use your teacher skills and your instructional design skills to say, all right, now that you've explained this to me, I think this is how we can set up a course, whatever learning experience you're trying to develop. You absolutely do not need to be the expert in these things.
Yeah. So, and that's a great point. One of the things in one of the jobs I had, we always used to say that I'm the expert in online learning, or I'm the expert in how people learn and how to design for learning. And then you're the expert in the content. So a lot of times professors will go to school to become an expert in, a math professor might become an expert in math. But that doesn't mean that they were given the education as to how to be a good math teacher. They may have been.
We've all had that math professor.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to knock professors that do that, because some of them may be great teachers. They may have know just naturally. They may have been taught through their program, but that doesn't mean just because they're an expert, which is a professor, or an executive of leadership, right, or something like that, that may not mean that they know how. So somebody like you, who's a trainer, or somebody that's like you as an instructional designer, would come and partner with. So you have those two different roles, and you gave a great explanation as to how they work together and the reason for it. So thank you for that. Getting all kinds of great little nuggets from you.
Appreciate it. Glad I could be of somewhat help.
Well, and I'm sure it'll be of great help to a lot of teachers. people who do view this, people who are current teachers, or possibly even just new to instructional design. A lot of the stuff that we're talking about here, whoever views it, I'm sure will be very helpful to a lot of people. So if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and ask you what's the best way for people to contact you. I know I can include your LinkedIn information. If there's some other way, or if they have a website you want me to make sure to include, just let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn's always, I think, the best way to get a hold of me. Check it, pretty periodically. So love to have conversations. Like I said, I think great. I love meeting new people and just talking to people. I think what you're doing is incredible. I wish I had known about this when I was a teacher. I think I was one of the lucky ones who got tapped. But I mean, I do wonder what my career would have been like had I not been tapped on the shoulder. I think I was very happy teaching and could have done it for a long time. But I just think it's really cool for those teachers who are thinking, I want something new and different and challenging, to know and trust that they have a lot of really, really valuable skills.
Yes. Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much. Totally appreciate it. Do you have any other last words of advice for anybody watching, or anything you want to add? And if not, that's fine.
Just get out there and meet people, and kind of just remember the value that you bring, and think intelligently about how to speak to those skills that you're going to bring, and stay curious.
Awesome. Stay curious. That needs to be the title of this. So, all right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Scott. Totally appreciate it. You have a great rest of the day, and
You too.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and wrap up. So see you later.